Well, howdy, Internet. Welcome to the Trifles Talkback. I'm Chris Gibson. I'm the production manager at Open Stage here in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And we are here today talking about this beautiful piece of theater that just kind of technically closed, just had its final scheduled performance, but you can still catch it if you're clever and you want to jump on the YouTube. You can at least till the end of the day. If you've missed it, you have one last chance to sort of jump up there and check it out. But it's a beautiful piece of theater that we were so honored to present, and we were particularly honored to work with so many of the talented folks in our community, and we're going to bring some of those folks on to the show here and discuss a little bit of the themes of the show and making theater in a digital age and some of the history behind the piece. But before we get to that, I do want to mention and thank our Inner Circle members. The Inner Circle at Open Stage is basically how we were able to survive throughout this pandemic. The Inner Circle is a group of passionate arts supporters who believe that theater is priceless. And so by their monthly donations, we were able to continue to produce this entire season, our 35th season, online on a completely by donation or sliding scale, or essentially a free way of presenting, because our Inner Circle members make monthly contributions. And so by joining the Inner Circle, you make theater accessible for somebody who maybe can't afford it. So we hope that you will consider joining the Inner Circle. And if you'd like more information about that, you can go to openstagehbg.com and support the arts. We'd appreciate it if you did. So let's get straight to the talk back. This is such a beautiful and troubling piece of theater that seems so prescient in today's world, but it was written in 1916 by Susan Glaspell, and it is somewhat based on historic fact. So I want to bring on a few of the members of the production team. We've got Christopher Ellis, who directed the piece, with us today. Hey, Chris. And we've got Karen Ruch, who played Mrs. Hale in the piece. Hey, Rookie. And we've got Jeff Wasileski, who played. Oh gosh, Jeff, what was your character's name?
Mr. Hale.
Mr. Hale and Mrs. Hale. Right. Indeed. So, this piece, well, as I said, it's somewhat based in historical fact. But Chris, I'm curious, with your directing the piece, what was your experience with this play before you took on directing it? And you're muted, by the way.
Yeah. So in the digital age, I did not know anything honestly about Trifles until I was requested to put a piece together. I had mentioned to Stuart Landon that I had always wanted to direct, and this was that opportunity. And so, I went about looking for pieces. I had originally thought I was going to do something by Ionesco or Mark Twain or, something. And I just happened upon this beautiful one-act piece, and I was just blown away by its humanity and the silence in it and the ramifications of the character's silence in it. And so, I said, okay, this is the one. and so we went about putting the cast together and the crew. And
am I right then, Chris? Because I didn't understand this. This is your directorial debut?
Yes.
Well, kudos, my friend.
Yes, it is.
That's impressive, because it's impossible to tell that from watching the piece. It looks like it was handled deftly by a skilled hand. So congratulations, well done, way to knock it out of your park on your first time at the plate. Let's I'm gonna talk to Karen and Jeff a little bit about it too, because It looks like we might be having a little trouble with Chris's feed, Rach. It looks like we got him in another backstage. We'll get him worked out in a second. Karen Ruch, now you have, I don't know how much history you have with the play itself, but you certainly have some history with the title, with the subject of the play. Is that right?
Yeah. So I learned later that this play was written as a reaction to real life events of a character, a woman that was known as Ma Hasek, who was accused of and jailed for murdering her husband in his bed. And I played Ma in a play called Murderess at Gamut Theater.
And wonderful productions. Several ladies all playing different murderesses.
So
good. Yep. Mm-hmm.
It was an incredible show. We took that show to Delaware as well. There's a theater company there that heard about it and wanted us to take it there. But anyway, I got to play the character of the farmer, the woman who was accused of killing her husband, who then Susan Glaspell took that story that was in the news at the time and then wrote this play about a woman whose husband was killed rather mysteriously in his bed. So that's my connection to it. I'm playing a different character, and we never see that woman. We never see the Ma Hasek character in Trifles, but she's talked about a lot.
Yeah, well, I think that's one of the most fascinating pieces about this play is that the two central characters, essentially, the play is about, are never seen. The man who is killed and the woman who's accused of killing him are essentially brought to life through the perspectives of these different people who knew them or are investigating the situation. Jeff, did you have familiarity with this piece before you were cast?
No, other than I had seen Karen in Murderess, and when I heard that this play was based on that, I thought that's fascinating. I didn't realize there was an earlier play written about the event. And
it's and is I believe your characters are actually based on real people too, right, Mr. Hale and Mrs. Hale, or are they amalgamations of characters from the story?
I'm not sure, but from what I know of the research I did for the Ma Hasek character in Murderess, that there were a lot of neighbors who were very aware of the troubled marriage of the Haseks, and Ma had actually fled to the neighbors for help numerous times prior to that, and then after the event happened, there's all these people sitting back and tut-tutting about, how could she do such a thing? So I would guess they're an amalgamation of the sort of neighbor characters. But I think Susan Glaspell gives a more sympathetic spin for the women to empathize with the experience.
Well, that's an interesting thing too, because there's the play itself was written in 1916, and Susan Glaspell was actually a reporter who was covering the actual Hasek murder, and originally had came on pretty aggressively against Ma Hasek, and then when Susan Glaspell was able to visit the location herself, her tone took a dramatic change, and that's what kind of came about, where this play came about. And then I think eventually she actually converted the piece into a piece of mystery fiction called A Jury of Her Peers. And so it seemed like the reporter in becoming part of the story, investigating it, took a different perspective. But I'm curious at how this play, it's such a great play. I love a short play, a clean play, and so efficiently written. And I think that stands to it's a testament to its staying power, and yet I got to imagine that audiences that watched it in the early 1900s might have had a different perspective on the piece as opposed to people who are watching it in the modern day. Chris, when you were approaching the piece, what did you feel was the main point or purpose or theme or takeaway that the audience from the directorial standpoint was meant to come away with?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things when I initially read it, that kind of like stuck with me. I mean, of course, the relationship between Mrs. Hale and Mrs. Peters. I think their dynamic is just so powerful and incredible, that in the end you're on this journey basically with them, and they through their detective work come about finding what could potentially be, the motive for her killing her husband. And then they decide to not give that over to the men. And so I find that just so jarring, and yet I sympathize with them for doing so, because, the men weren't really aware of, or even cared, I think, necessarily, if she did it, why did she do it? And I think that's what we're on the journey for. And so that really stuck out with me. I think that was, besides the canary, which I think has so much meaning. That's, if you want to know why I did it, that's the main reason. Why would someone kill a little bird? What would cause, and like you said, we never get to see Mr. or Mrs. Wright.
Right.
And so we're only hearing this through the lens of the other characters, and they're figuring out, what kind of relationship Mrs. Wright and Mr. Wright had, and what happened to the bird, and why he was murdered if she did in fact do it. It's interesting, and I'm glad that she kept. It's a very clean play. That's also another reason why I, as an actor, I'm always interested in that tennis match, that back and forth. This happened, and then that causes this to happen, and so it's just this domino effect that keeps the audience like engaged, and they're in it with the characters, and they're like, okay, maybe I would do this, but the character does this, and why? And so I really love that it is a clean play, and again, I think that does speak to its timeliness, and at the end of it, and in real life, with the factual murder, it divided the community, and so I think it leaves the audience, or it definitely, I can only speak for myself, but it definitely left me thinking, was she right in doing, in protecting herself? Is that ever a thing to do? It's what was her mental state? And it must have been very hard for her to have this little bird, and then to have her husband snap his neck. That, I think, if you are in it with that state of mind, I think you can. It's more plausible that you see that she's basically had enough. And if you're in the time that she's in, with no help or no resources that we have today, that's a pretty tough spot.
Indeed, and I like that the play doesn't necessarily or certainly overtly answer any questions. It definitely leaves the audience to make decisions about really what did happen, and but if the only thing that you're certain of is what didn't happen, and the women chose not to speak about what they found, which I think was very powerful. But Jeff, you were saying something particularly I found interesting. We were chatting before about the reality of home life in the turn of the century, in these sort of rural farmlands, and the and the lifestyle and the trials and tribulations associated with women of that time. And Jeff, could you extrapolate on what you were talking about before?
Yeah, one of the things, if you read any accounts or diaries or things like that of people that were living essentially the frontier or the former frontier out west, the isolation and loneliness were huge factors, and particularly for women. And one thing that's very striking, and I think the fact that the play is about the bird that the woman had, you can see pictures of sod huts in the middle of nowhere with dirt floors, and they all have bird cages, because that was the one source of companionship or sort of connection that women had, who were often by themselves. Their husbands would be working long hours far away from home, and it created this enormous sense of loneliness. And men had kind of the release that it was acceptable for them to go into town and go drinking. And so part of that, the men had alcohol as their release, whereas women really didn't have anything and didn't have companionship other than occasionally visits by neighbors. And again, the distance between these farms was huge, so that would be rare as well.
Yeah, and the loneliness of being sort of stuck at home all day while the men folk are out at work, and then when they come home they're stinking drunk. It does not paint a particularly a pretty picture for women of that time. And I think one of the themes about this play is obviously status, and the disparity of status between men and women, and that is pretty much outlined right at the outset with this conversation that's going on with the investigator and the menfolk, and the women are just sort of invisible. And when they finally do speak, they're mocked. Karen, can you speak a little bit to that?
I think I think it's really smart of Susan Glaspell to not have Mrs. Wright appear, because she continues to be invisible, right, in this story. Just talked about, not present. And I think that, to answer Gloria's question specifically, the canary was not a part of Ma Hassek's story. I think that is a beautiful metaphor for this precious thing, her youth. Mrs. Hale talks about how she used to sing beautifully, and what a beautiful, fluttery, delicate thing she was before she got into this marriage and life changed. So I think that's really important. But, the men just mock of like, oh, we're going to go look for evidence, and anything the women have to do here, cleaning up or in the kitchen, is a trifle, is not significant. And it's either something utilitarian, right? And that's another thing that the bird is. Those canaries, I think it's really cool that Jeff said that, there was a lot of these frontier homes that had them, because not only are they companionship, but they're frivolous. It's a little thing that you don't have to have. It's not going to plow your fields. It's not going to clean your house. It's not going to feed your family. It's just something pretty, and I think there's, but again, it's a trifle. Right. But we now understand how important that can be to our mental health, right? So I think that's really significant. And just the whole idea of, is she guilty because of her circumstance? Is she not guilty because of her circumstance? I mean, the battered woman defense isn't something that came along for, a long time, decades and decades later.
Yeah, wouldn't even be considered.
Yeah. So I do think it's amazing how much the women see and the men are blind to. The women see all of these things and put them all together, and the men are completely oblivious to them because they're invisible to them.
Yeah, it's I think that was one of the stark lessons of this play is how you live in the world that you choose. You live in the world that you experience, and these men are experiencing a world in which women are so completely irrelevant that, and anything that they say is irrelevant, that they have nothing, they really have nothing to offer. And they're and it's, I just think it's fantastic that what Susan Glaspell did was, you introduce that concept and then have the men leave stage, and then suddenly the investigation starts, and it starts, and it begins, is figured out and wrapped up in like, a short amount of time, and then the men come in and proceed to continue to ignore the women. And so from those men's perspective, this is just, sort of unsolvable, but the power of the play comes from what's not spoken, and that is, that's pretty. I don't know if Susan Glaspell, if Susan Glaspell wrote other pieces of theater, but it's a pretty expertly conceived and structured piece, with the metaphor of the bird, and the choosing to not have the central character ever be seen, and really, I mean, exploiting the power of an unspoken word is that's high level stuff when it comes to theater, and I have to admit my ignorance that I don't know much more about Susan Glaspell's work, but boy, that we could use definitely more plays like that the power of sparsity and the power of efficiency. Chris, I want to, you and Karen both were in Angels of America with me and us at Open Stage, and I think it is worth mentioning, is I don't want to belabor the point of internet theater, but what an interesting journey this past year, with this pandemic being shutting us down, and us sort of really immediately launching into a an 8-hour Zoom production, and then now that we are knock on wood coming to hopefully a new place in this pandemic, and we're seeing maybe a light at the tunnel, at the end of the tunnel. I look at the work that is done in this piece, the way it's presented, and I see a real confidence and a real a sort of comfortability with a form that we didn't really have when we were doing Angels in America. We were definitely figuring it out, and I'm curious. And Jeff, I know you've done a lot of internet, readings and that. So I would love it if each one of you would speak, starting with you, Chris, about how has creating theater changed for you over this past year, and did Angels in America inform how you approached Trifles?
Oh, 100%. Angels, it was definitely a moment for me, and we were, kind of like just jumping into it and saying, okay, this is what we're doing, and seeing how things work. Now I've been taking Meisner classes online since then, and so it's, and I was always afraid of film. It's so permanent, and you have to see yourself, and all of that, and the camera picks up everything. But with Trifles, the comfortability with not only, I think, everyone having done this for a little bit of time online, and also with each other. I think the cast, if I'm not If I'm not just sort of like throwing it out there, I think everybody's pretty much worked with everybody.
Yeah.
And so there's this sense of like, we know each other. We connect with each other. We're here for each other. And that's exactly what I needed for Trifles. And there's a picture of the original production, and I have to, you know, pat myself on the back for that, because I feel like I cast it perfect. I can't, like, it's everyone brought it 100%, and I could not be more pleased with a directorial debut. I don't think it will be like this, and it was, you know, online, and so, you know, there's this immediacy when, you know, the camera is picking up each and every nuance, and for Trifles, the silence is so important, and being there with, you know, the characters being there with each other is so important for the, you know, the moments to work. Yeah, I just, you know, I can only speak to as the director watching it, but I was 100% floored each and every time.
Well, yeah, I'm gonna have to back you up there, Chris. It's no slight on your direction skills, but casting well is a good start, and you know, that group of people on screen or on stage or in any capacity, when you see them together, you know you're in for something good. Jeff, you what has it been like for you as an actor over the past year, and how does the work that you've been doing on screen register or compare to the work that you've done on stage?
Well, I think it has been sort of this evolution from, you know, the first time you do one of these, it's sort of, what are we trying to do here, that type of thing. And as the year has gone on, I think, as you said, we've all kind of found a way to make it work. Certainly, I miss the connection with the actual being in the presence of the other actors. There is something that isn't quite the same, and certainly not having the connection with the audience is really something that I miss, and I'm hoping we can get back to that soon.
Amen to that, brother. I definitely agree. Rookie, you know, gosh, to go from playing all of those characters that you played in Angels in America to the sort of antithesis to that of this sort of stoic, quiet woman, and I mean, that had to be, I would imagine, a lot less stressful for you.
Yeah. Well, I will say, like, doing Angels the way we did, there's so much emotion tied to that experience for so many different reasons.
Yeah.
And it was not what we expected. But I will say it made the quick changes to all those characters much easier. What has struck me over this last, God, we're coming up on that year anniversary, and I do expect we all need to give ourselves a break, because I think that anniversary is going to come and it's going to bring a lot of emotion. But I've been so struck by my theater community, friends, artists, whatever, the drive to continue to create and adapt and make something, tell a story. We still need to tell stories. We are compelled. It's why we do this, right? So all of the creative ways that have been found to do that. Yes, we're missing the audience. Yes, we're missing being in a rehearsal room together. And by God, I will never take rehearsal for granted ever again.
Right.
But just that, you know, it's that will to live that awoke in every creative person to try to make something work and tell some kind of story has just been mind-blowing. And anytime someone wants to cast me with my theater husband, Jeff Wasileski, I am there.
Me too, yes. How many times have we?
I don't know. It seems like a lot, but
Yeah.
it's probably only been a few, but it feels like a lot.
Derek Neal made a comment that Derek is an old friend of mine from doing theater back in Orlando years and years ago, and he said that he chose stage over film as because of the live aspect, but that he's felt differently about that during this pandemic. So and Derek encourages us to move forward doing both of those things. And I will say that, you know, from Open Stage's perspective, we would very much like to get back into the business of putting bodies in a room together and affecting people in that way. And as a lifelong theatrician myself, I respect the power of Broadway. I respect the power of film, but for me, that sweet spot has always been in a very small theater with about 100 people in the audience and about 10 people on stage, and that dynamic being so powerful. But and we all know, being in this industry, that when the shutdown first happened, and there were those of us who said, well, you know, look, I mean, I think with Angels, it was just like, God, we spent so much work on this anyway. Let's just, for our own satisfaction, have some sort of temporary, you know, resolution of it, rather than, well, here's an opportunity to be on screen. I mean, it really wasn't about that at all. It was about the actors. I mean, honestly, I think the actors decided to get online and rehearse on Zoom before Stewart had any intention of putting it on screen, and then
because we thought we were going to be going back to rehearsals initially, right? So we're like, let's keep this fresh. Let's get together and go over the lines.
Yeah, because we had no idea. But I will say this: you know, there's a lot of people in the industry who have been sort of poo-pooing online theater productions and saying, you know, that it's not what we do, and you know, this sort of almost this nonsense of gatekeeping of it selling out or something. I will just say this to them. The thing that you said, Karen, that struck with me is community. And you know, look, we are all storytellers in the theater, particularly the people who are on stage or the people who are involved in design and production. But that's only half of the story. The other half of the story is the audience and the interconnection of all of us either collaborating, because the audience, we always call them our final, the final actor, right? The final character in the show is always that audience. And that sense of community is as important as that urge to tell stories. And even in a small way, to have that sense, to have that community stay connected throughout this pandemic, for me, kept me from losing my ever loving mind. You know what I mean? And it really showed me how important that community aspect is of theater. And so I do very much look forward to, you know, getting people back in the room together. I'm very happy that as an organization, we were able to take a risk and jump in and lean into some technology, because I think it has provided Open Stage with some new possibilities. Once we're back into creating the type of theater that we are, you know, sort of known for and love to do, we also have this ability to do other things now. Online streaming with technology, you know, it's going to be tough to license plays and stream them that are, you know, that somebody has else has written. But we have found through this challenging time that there is a way to create and tell stories online as well as on stage, and I think maybe even more importantly, to foster that sense of community. I want to thank you guys, and before we go, we have to shout out to the folks who aren't here with us. Tom Weaver. Can we all just agree that Tom Weaver is just a terrible person, and we all hate him? And he's just a lousy actor and not a funny guy, not a handsome guy. So we're all on the same page with that.
You'll never hear those words from my mouth.
No,
Never, ever.
Never.
Yeah, I love me some Tom Weaver. And how about the team of Jerry and Philip with the I mean, yeah, to have skilled cinematography and editing That's something we didn't have when we were doing Angels, boy. And I'll tell you, while I could see things like cohesiveness. Rita brought up the cohesiveness of the sets, with the backdrops and the black and white screen. So wonderfully done. But the score and the establishing shots, so beautifully done, so beautiful, tastefully, and again, spare, not more than was necessary. It was just there enough to sort of put a framework on that story and then allow the actors to do it. And of course, Alexis Dow Campbell, just always a pleasure to watch her work in whatever capacity you get to do it. And if you're lucky enough to be the person who's working with her, you know how much better that is than to be in the audience. And I'll say the same for the three of you. I've worked with each of you on many occasions on screen and on stage now, and I look very much forward to getting back on stage with you. Rach, is there any questions that I'm missing before we?
You missed a couple people. Matt Golden, Jess Ross.
Matt Golden said, well, I don't see Matt Golden's.
No, you're supposed to. He's in the people who.
Yeah.
Oh, I missed people who were in the production. Matt Golden. How did I not say Matt Golden? Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
Former sweetheart.
Because what happens is I go on Alexis Dow Campbell, and then everything else just blows out of my mind. I'm just
happens to all of us. Happens to all of us.
Dreaming about Alexis. Matt Golden, America. I don't know what America's problem with Matt Golden is. America used to love Matt Golden. He's their former sweetheart, and that's a joke that I started like a year ago, and nobody is going to let it die. But we all love Matt. There hasn't been, I don't think, a production in a 10-mile radius of Harrisburg in the past year that hasn't had Matt Golden's name on it, either producing, directing, acting, just a tour de force in the midst of this pandemic. Matt has really blossomed, and Jess Ross, somebody who never is going to get any kind of recognition outside of from those of us who are in the production, is a stage manager, and more than that, a good stage manager, and more than that, an incredibly good stage manager. We know anybody watching this or involved in theatrical production knows the entire production hangs in the balance of, is your stage manager capable and is your stage manager good? And Jess is always so damn good, and we love her, and so grateful to her work always, also on Angels America as well. Hi
Cindy.
Thank you, Cindy. I mean, I want to
give a shout out. I want to give a shout out to Patrick Siebold. He's the one who put the piece, the music together, the score.
So beautiful.
I told him I wanted something to really pull at your heartstrings, and he delivered.
Boy, did he! That we have been very fortunate this year. I will say that in all of our digital creations, I don't know what you call them, but throughout the season, we have been, as we always are, blessed with musical talent. And the score for this, the score for Sleepy Hollow, and the scores that Nick Warner has been just miraculously pulling out of his, I don't know where he pulls them. We have been, and because, whether it's film or stage, it's easy, I think, for people who aren't thinking about it to neglect or miss the importance of how effective music is at conveying tone and emotion. And I thought the music that was put together for Trifles was just spectacular. And I'm sorry, I don't know the musician's name. Could you repeat his name for me, Chris?
Patrick Siebold.
Patrick Siebold. And did he
beautiful.
He composed and played all that, or were there other musicians involved?
No, he did it all himself. I told him I wanted some Chopin, and he was like, I got it.
Well, it was really, really beautiful. Everybody is kind of just chiming in on the chat room about the quality of the experience and the quality of the play and the quality of the production. And so I'm just going to echo that and put my hands together for you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
I love you all so
Thank
much.
you. Yes.
We're so proud of the work that you brought to us, and we're so proud of you. And so thanks, Chris Ellis and Karen Ruch and Jeff Wasileski. I'm going to let you guys go. I love you. Be well.
Thank you.
We'll
Hope to see you on stage soon.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. Me too. Indeed. For those of you who are joining us for the Talkback, thanks for checking it out, and thank you for participating. And if you'd like to catch Trifles, you can probably still get to it on YouTube or Facebook over the next at least until midnight tonight. If you want to ensure that you have the ability to see it in the future, you might want to consider becoming a member of our inner circle. Our inner circle members have access to the vault, as we call it, and pieces that we've recorded over this past year, and we'll have access to perks and special gifts, or not gifts, but special products like at the bar that Benny and Rachel and I do once a month, and all kinds of fun ways that you get to sort of have a little bit more of an experience at Open Stage. And I will tell you this, if you can join the Open Circle, you're going to make it possible for everybody to enjoy theater, and hopefully, knock on wood, fingers crossed, we'll be experiencing that theater together in our beautiful new facility. It's not new. It's been there for how many years? 27, 28 years. We are moving into our 35th season, but we have a beautiful, newly renovated venue that is sitting there waiting for patrons to come in. We'll have our main stage theater when we open the facility back up, hopefully in the fall. We'll have our main stage theater, we'll have our studio theater, and we'll have the Court Street Cabaret lounge all up and running, and we look forward to that day. In the meantime, keep your eyes peeled for our summer series of cabarets that will be happening outdoors at Italian Lake and Reservoir Park here in Harrisburg. And those of you who are enjoying our content from around the country and around the world, keep your eyes peeled to our YouTube channel and our Facebook pages. There will be more coming for you as well. You'll want to check out My Talented Friends Live on Tuesday nights, The Obstructed View on Thursday nights, and happy to welcome to that family of internet TV shows, the Harrisburg Black Newsbeat, featuring Dr. Kamika Campbell, on the second and fourth Wednesdays of every month. So there's lots of stuff going on at Open Stage. You can be a part of it. Join the inner circle. Go to openstagehbg.com, and we thank you for watching. Have a great day.